Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Research, innovation, education. All of these concepts are being held out as competitive advantages and our region's best way forward. Hello, I'm Chris William, and we look at these very important concepts through the lens of contemporary policy and issues this time on Carolina Business Review, the most widely watched program on business and policy here in our region. And later, the newly minted CEO of Research Triangle Institute, Wayne Holden.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded August 2nd, 2013. On this week's program, Frederick Cartwright of Clemson University, Jim Roberts of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and special guest Dr. Wayne Holden, President and CEO of RTI International. Now, Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Happy summer. Fred, welcome to the program. Good to have you here.
Great
Jim,
to be here.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You know, we talk about research, we talk about innovation, we talk about creativity and all these things. Fred, it seems like, the North Carolina General Assembly and the South Carolina State House just not long ago finished their sessions and put in place their budgets and are moving forward now with getting some of the policy issues that they had decided in fact. And it seems like a lot of these bridge a lot of what you are trying to do and have had success in the upstate of South Carolina, research development, innovation. Education seemed to be a bit of a winner here, not as much as many people hope. Transportation and infrastructure seemed to get a nod in the South Carolina legislature. So how do you take some measure of success, and how does Clemson University, and specifically ICAR, play upon a great success of the aircraft and the automotive cluster?
Chris, ICAR has been around since 2007, so we're still a startup in many respects. But what makes it so distinctive is just the partnering between academia and industry there on the campus. I've been there for about 4 months now. Came from Detroit, worked for General Motors for over 30 years. So what attracted me was the distinctiveness of CU-ICAR when it comes to the education of the young people there. The fact that CU-ICAR offers an automotive education, automotive engineering degree truly makes it distinctive. But I think more importantly, the partnering with industry to give the students more of an experiential education on campus is very unique. And so we're preparing the workforce of the future in that regard.
Fred, I don't want to chase this down the rabbit hole too far, but you came from Detroit, spent many years there, and we've all seen the headlines around the lack of fiscal solvency with the city and just the blight and the challenges culturally that Detroit has gone through. And it seems kind of ironic to me that South Carolina has really built the automotive cluster into something pretty dramatic that's got a lot of promise to it. Is there any worry that South Carolina could not end up, but could go the way that Detroit did, that built so much credibility and so much ground and infrastructure around cars and automotive and transportation, that is too much in any one industry silo?
I don't think so, Chris. I mean, the Detroit issue is really a city issue that was, developing over a long period of time. I think the fact that Southeast Michigan is so dependent on the automotive industry, exacerbated the problem. South Carolina is more diverse, in terms of the or the sectors that it serves. So I don't think we run that kind of risk. I think the challenge for South Carolina, from my point of view, as someone new coming to the state, is the sector really isn't fully developed.
Right.
I mean, it's focused on manufacturing. It's done a great job of bringing the BMWs and others of the world to do assembly, in the state. But there's not a lot of product development, not a lot of engineering development, not a lot of, wealth creation that occurs in the state, along that product pipeline, if you will. So I think that's where we need to focus our attention, in time, is bring the technical centers and the centers for product development into the state. Not that manufacturing isn't important, but it's the middle that's missing, I think, from my perspective.
Well, and we're going to give you a chance to expound on that. Jim, let's pull you into this. Out there on the coast at UNC Wilmington, thanks for making the drive, because I know that's not a 45-minute commute. UNC Wilmington has put a pretty big stake in the ground with this innovation step forward, a separate building, off campus, I'm assuming, for entrepreneurial and innovation and creative development. Let me ask you a policy question before we get into the mechanics of this.
Okay.
Is there any concern that, given the politics in North Carolina now and some of the pretty acute back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats, is this going to be hard to develop given some of the challenges in what's going on in North Carolina?
No, I think the politics can be separated from what we're trying to do. We're really trying to draw on quality of place. We live in a place where people want to live, and people, if you have that and you have the infrastructure to help them start a business, then there's really no reason why they can't. Our center is about new ideas, a new facility, new infrastructure, and investment capital. So really all we need are the people with the ideas, the seed for the companies, and the drive to make it happen. We're really trying to change the perception of the rest of the state and surrounding states that Wilmington is a tourism-only economy and build a knowledge-based economy.
So when people aren't on Wrightsville, they're supposed to be in the entrepreneurial and the innovation part. I get that. But is this a school, is this UNC Wilmington, is there another agenda here? And I don't mean any sinister agenda, but would UNC Wilmington like to see some tech transfer come out of this to say, this is something we could develop as a school, much like the Centennial Campus and NC State has been able to do? Is that what this is?
Partially. We're not a Tier 1 research university, so our tech transfer to date has been pretty limited. We have some exciting technology around facial recognition software that could be used in security. We have some interesting marine bio, which is really what the university is known for, is marine biotechnology. But we'd like to prevent the brain drain that has happened in the Wilmington area, where our best and brightest students believe they have to move to Charlotte or Greensboro or Raleigh or Virginia to get the best jobs. And we have a certain amount of expertise in information technology where our graduates get really good jobs. They're just not local jobs. And we'd rather keep that brain power in the coastal region.
And what's the best way forward for the school to do that, besides throwing money at buying a new building? How do they do that, really?
Well, it's much more than a building. It's I'm equally as driven as the entrepreneurs, and I think our experience of being friends, that. So we have to take advantage of that and make real things happen. And the facility is just a home. It's not the solution. The brain power is the solution. The innovation is the solution.
I wish we had more time to drill down into what innovation and creativity really mean and how you get there. But come back to you, Fred, because you use the term not fully developed, and you're talking about the automotive industry. In broad terms, I understand that. So let me ask you this way, Fred. Can Clemson University, can ICAR be a partner with let's say, the economic development machine in South Carolina to say, okay, we've got Michelin, we've got Continental Tire, we've got some Bridgestone, we've got BMW, we've got the air cluster going on. How can you leverage those manufacturers to go to other manufacturers that either haven't made the choice yet and really, I guess, not turn you into an economic developer, but certainly lean in that direction with the state as a partner? How do you do that, really?
Well, as you said, I mean, it takes the Department of Commerce and the county and the city organizations in order to pull this together and create the incentives to bring some of the companies to the area. And when I mentioned that the automotive sector is underdeveloped, what I mean is that manufacturing is very important in the state, and it's contributed a lot to the economy. But we need to build incentives, and we need to work together as a team to attract, the tier 1 suppliers, the tier 2 suppliers to the automotive sector, and even aerospace for that matter, to come to this region to do the same thing that the manufacturing side has done in the state. I mean, that's what creates intellectual capital. That's what creates wealth for the region, as Jim is working on more of the entrepreneurial startup side. So it's maybe making the move more toward building this knowledge economy certainly in South Carolina together.
Are you getting a lot of latitude from Clemson University to do this?
Yeah, that's not a challenge. I think it's just this is a bit of a change in direction, and it's going to take time that we're all working together toward attracting. CU-ICAR we have 250 acres that was initially established to do this work. We have only developed less than 20% of that. So the challenge that's been given to me is, what's next? What's next in our maturity? And I think working with the state, especially, to focus on that missing middle of product development and even manufacturing innovation is where we need to turn our attention.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to bring our guest out in a moment, but it seems like the Clemson is very rich as a land grant university and a lot of inventory with the land and can do, and I know sounds like you're going to at least leverage that part of it. Gentlemen, thank you. Stay with us on the program. Next week on this program, the CEOs of municipalities. This is going to be an interesting dialogue. The mayors of 4 towns here in the Carolinas, and they are Mayor Stephen Wakila from Florence, who's been on this program before, a rising star in the political party in South Carolina. Also, Mayor Terry Bellamy from Asheville will be here, Mayor Stephen Benjamin from Columbia, and Mayor Patsy Kinsey from Charlotte, all here and all talking about the best way forward for the region and their particular towns. With a very deep background in psychology and research and academia and senior managerial experience, it will ostensibly take much of that knowledge to expand and to change the direction of Research Triangle-based RTI International. RTI is one of the globe's leading independent nonprofit research organizations with more than 3,700 people operating in diverse cultures of 75 countries. Joining us now is RTI International President and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Wayne Holden. Dr. Holden, welcome. And I said this to you before the program. I'll say it to you again. You've got some pretty small pumps to fill after Victoria, pretty small high heels to fill after Victoria Haynes. Congratulations on the job. What is the best way forward? How do you grow RTI?
Well, the best way for RTI to grow going forward is to diversify our funding sources. We've been very successful over the last 30 or 40 years in becoming a U.S. federal government-funded research organization, and have done a really good job doing that. During that time, U.S. federal government funding has either been flat or grown year over year. What's happened with the sequester and the deal that was struck in 2011 between the administration and Congress is that now you have a slowly declining discretionary funding picture really over the next 10 years. And so our approach is to develop more internationally based funding, and develop more commercially based funding.
You know, let me go to the sequestration for a minute and talk about the federal funding and not the hollowing out, but certainly, as you said, the gradual decline. Is this one of these things, Wayne, where you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, you know, we're dodging this bullet now, but with 80+% of your funding, your top line coming from federal contracts, it's got to keep you up at night.
Well, it keeps you up at night, but the pace of change is actually a little bit slower. And one of the reasons it's slower for us is we're really a diversified organization in terms of our federal funding portfolio. It varies all the way from basic lab science to international development and international aid. And if you remember, the sequester was half of it was defense and half of it was rest of discretionary spending. Well, for those contractors that have a lot of the defense support, they're hurting more because there's been more direct reductions in defense contracting. Whereas with us, as a diversified organization, different agencies are dealing with it differently, and we're seeing a slower picture of change across time.
And if it's not proprietary information, what part of your portfolio, your client portfolio, is defense or defense related or DoD?
Oh, our DoD portfolio is less than 3 or 4% of our total portfolio.
Fred, question?
Just a question on the manufacturing side. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the part of the federal government on manufacturing innovation, setting up these manufacturing institutes, but I'd appreciate, Wayne, maybe your perspective, since automotive is a part of the manufacturing sector and very much drives the economy in many ways. But is that a good move to focus so much attention on manufacturing innovation? And
I mean, I think it's a good. I think that program that President Obama really drove and the administration drove is a good program to have manufacturing research clusters, basically, that they're going to fund. And the way that they're funding that is they're trying to make sure that there's plenty of private sector involvement, that there's plenty of university involvement, and that there's also plenty of government involvement at the local and state level. So it's not a situation where you have the federal government providing all the funds over a period of time. And I think that's probably the way to create sustainability in those kinds of initiatives, is for the federal government to be a partner along with other private entities and other government entities to drive that forward. We have some engineering in our organization. Right now, the biggest piece of that is energy engineering. But we do less on the manufacturing end, some semiconductors, some sensor kind of work, that kind of stuff. So we really partner with other organizations who are more interested in the issues of what are the processes of research, the important issues around the manufacturing part of it.
Okay.
Jim?
So you are RTI International. What international country is North Carolina not paying enough attention to? I know Australia is doing really well, and you have a new contract there, and Africa is booming, but where are you focusing your efforts internationally?
Well, I think we have a pretty big presence in sub-Saharan Africa. It's all entirely U.S. government funded. What we're trying to do is we're trying to shift really more towards Asia, and also we do some work in the Gulf states in the Middle East, and focusing on those two areas, as well as China as a point of a reference for us, because we see those areas as having more of the emerging economies, more of the possibility of an emerging economy providing some funding to us to assist them with particular issues, or in the case of Australia, their international development funding obviously goes to Southeast Asia, which is an area that we're interested in and have a regional office in. So those are the prime locations that we're really focused on.
When obviously you hail from Research Triangle Park and in the state of North Carolina. When you see some of the debate that goes on around policy in North Carolina, whether the Republicans in charge or not, some of the acute debate that goes on, does that concern you? Not personally, but as an organization, does it put you at risk one way or another here about some of the?
Well, I think the debate, broadly speaking, I think we're interested in the debate. As it turns out, we have very little state support in our organization. It's minuscule in terms of the work that we actually do directly for state government in North Carolina. I think the concerns about us are with respect to the context of the state as a place for people to come to work, which was mentioned previously, the importance of preserving that. It's unique. Research Triangle Park is a unique place. Other places around the country where you have that kind of mix of organizations and people are usually metropolitan areas, are usually very high cost, expensive places to live that aren't as attracted to people. Our concern, and my personal concern, has to do with education in the state and making sure that we're continuing to improve the education system and not to sit back and rest on laurels from the past or to make mistakes now in terms of decisions that are made that unravel things with respect to some of the strengths of the education system in North Carolina, because I think it produces skilled, well-qualified people. We certainly hire lots of individuals from the three major universities who work with us, UNC, Duke, and NC State. But also across North Carolina, we're involved with a lot of the other universities and colleges as well.
Do you worry at all, and again, I promise I'm not going to chase this one down too long because we just don't have the time, but do you worry that some of the brand of North Carolina right now has been because of the political back and forth? Will it blow over, or is it going to have lasting effect on trying to get some of these higher skilled, higher wage folks to come and work at RTP?
Well, I think the national media has certainly given a lot of attention to what's gone on politically here in the last 6 or 8 months. And a lot of that attention has provided some less than positive information about North Carolina out there in the national media. So, I think we need to be aware of that. I think we need to pay attention to it and work on that across time. I think people who are savvy understand that it's media attention and it may not necessarily reflect what's happening in the state when you get here in the particular context and the organization that you work in. But I think if that goes on and changes are made in the educational system, it's going to impact workforce development here, and it's going to be a less attractive place for people to come and bring their families and raise their families. And we need to be aware of that across time. With respect to the workforce that we're engaged with the workforce at RTI is a pretty highly educated, pretty skilled workforce who are information workers and scientists driving things forward. Now, obviously, there's a whole other sets of workforce issues with respect to the state and workforce development that also need to be paid attention to at the community college level, at the technical skill level, et cetera.
Fred, we have about 3 minutes.
Just a question, Wayne, on the what you view to be the biggest economic development challenges maybe for North and South Carolina, looking long-term over the next 10 years or so.
Well, I think the continued focus on R&D in a variety of different sectors as that's growing across time. I think North Carolina has focused on biotechnology and has done a good job with biotechnology. I think there's opportunities in other areas for North Carolina to develop its capacity in R&D. I'm originally from South Carolina, as you know, and I think there's lots of opportunities in South Carolina to do that as well. And then the other piece of this is that the R&D enterprise is not circumscribed to a specific location. We're all global organizations wherever we are and wherever we work, and we're all connected around the global. So we need to think about that with respect to development across time. People are connected. We can connect them together very easily. We can do work very easily around the world, and we need to look at what we're doing here locally as kind of a central focus to that, but make sure we take advantage of that and build our capacity that way.
We have about a minute and a half. Quick question.
So fracking is an issue, and you have some expertise on staff at RTI. Can you talk about what impact that could have on North Carolina?
Well, so we have expertise on both ends. We have expertise in energy and energy development. We have expertise in environment. Both poles of this particular issue. I think it was probably a good move to study that in North Carolina. I think it was a good idea to open that particular opportunity up. I think that the resources here are probably more limited than they are in other parts of the country. But as part of what could be addressed with respect to the energy equation, I think it's really important. But I also think that the energy equation is a multidimensional equation in the future. Natural gas is one part of it, more so than it was 5 or 10 years ago. But it's not 80 or 90% of the solution in the future. So we need to keep working on what we're going to do about cleaning up coal. We need to keep working on biofuels. We need to keep working on other renewables. and make those part of the picture as well going forward.
You know, we're going to run out of time, but it's so nice to hear somebody be reasonable about energy development and not, you know, all go one way or all go the other way. So we'll have you back so we can talk more about this. I hope you will. And we're going to let you off the hook about, since you said you're from South Carolina, you wanted to talk a little bit how the SEC might be better than the ACC. God bless you for saying that. Off the air, of course. Thank you, Wayne. Good to have you here. Jim, nice to see you. Fred, good luck down there.
Thank you.
Until next week, I'm Chris Woody, and we hope all your business is good. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton, operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.